Hey, Amber has this amazing YouTube channel, amongst other things, called Put the Shovel Down. Tell us about that. Tell us what you do and all of the things.
All right. Well, by trade, I am a licensed mental health counselor and a master addiction counselor. And so I've been helping people overcome addiction for more than 20 years now, a long time. I feel really old when I say that. I started the YouTube channel back in 2016, really got into it in 2018. I really started doing it, trying to help not just reach people who have addictions, but specifically trying to reach people who have loved ones who have addictions, because I would constantly be getting calls like, I want my loved one to come see you, but I don't even know how to get them in there, or they don't think they have a problem, or they don't want to get help. And I spent a lot of time coaching families on how to interact with someone who has an addiction and what's helpful and what's not. And so often families are the ones looking for help. Everywhere they go, people just kind of give them the message of, well, there's nothing you can do, and you just have to wait until they decide they want it for themselves, and maybe they'll hit a bottom and figure it out. And for a lot of people, that's not an acceptable answer. If that's your kid or your partner, or you're like, that whole just cross my fingers and hope for the best, there's got to be something else. And a lot of what I do on YouTube is helping families figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what happens from you after YouTube? Like, people find you, and how else do they engage with you?
Well, I don't do counseling anymore because of YouTube, because these days we talk to people all over the world, and mostly it's consultations. So we do a lot of consultations with family members. We have some online courses, like we have an online course called The Invisible Intervention, which teaches family members how to get through to someone. And I still do some recovery coaching, but it's a strengths-based perspective. So it's like looking at what's right with you, not just what's wrong with you, and kind of how to redirect your energy in a way that works for you.
Yeah, I love that. And that's my mission over here too, is to really, every single client that I work with, and the first question I always ask them is, what's working and what are you celebrating? And that's why I asked you too, because if we're focused on the positive, then everything else from there can be, oh, there's a new perspective here, right? There's openness for a new perspective. I'm so impressed with your YouTube channel. It's something that I've thought about for many years, and I'm, oh my gosh, it seems so daunting. But thank you so much for the work you do. Moving on, this is actually how I first found Amber, before there was even this question of a potential collaboration with her coming on the show. And the reason I said yes to having Amber on the show was to support you all, to support the listeners here more, because it is something that I don't coach on regularly. Now, of course, I do coach on a woman's mindset, and if her partner is still drinking, how she can show up for herself around that. But I do believe there is a spectrum of addiction, use, and dependency. And it is just not something I talk about a lot. And not only is it important if the individual has had their own addiction, their own relationship with alcohol or any other substances, that they need to have that perspective too, because the way that they showed up to release alcohol might be very different from the way that, say, their partner is doing it. So I'll just kind of briefly give this little scenario, is that this was a dynamic happening in my own personal relationship, where my partner and I had partied together, we drank together, and really it's been an alcohol-free home and a substance-free home for since I've not been drinking. With the occasional, I kind of knew he had a couple of moments with alcohol, but I came to find out, actually, this just happened a few months ago, and it's still been pretty rocky, kind of rocked my nervous system, that he had been using a substance called kratom, or some people call it kratom, for the last 6 years. And I knew about this on and off, but I didn't know the extent of it. And I knew that there was this major detox happening, but it came to a head and there was lying and what feels as deceit. And it's something you can take very, very personally. And there was a lot of, I'm sure you have the words for it, a lot of denial on the other end of it. And a lot of, this is my life, it's not illegal. It was very delusional. Almost felt like he had died in a way. It was very surreal experience, the way he was communicating with me. So I went down a little rabbit hole of support, and you really were the one that I found many of your videos so helpful. So yeah, can you maybe just talk a little bit to the audience, if someone right now is in that space, they're working on their own, even if it's not sobriety, but they're working on just their own life, being the best version of themselves, and they're interacting or finding even that state specifically with someone that's in the state of denial.
Right. Well, if you're if you're in recovery yourself or figuring it out yourself, whatever you're at with that, it may seem, well, you've already figured all that out, so you would know exactly what to do. But that's not always the case, because you can run into a couple of extra roadblocks if you're in recovery. One is the people in your life can feel, oh, just because you did it doesn't mean you should push that on us, so they can have a resistance to hearing what you have to say because you're in recovery. And that's frustrating. The other thing is because you've been there, you know what you're looking at, and so you're even more worried, and you want them to figure it out, and you realize how much better you feel. So there's even more pressure to get through to this person and pull them over to your side of the street or your side way of thinking. And so there's a pressure about that. But in my experience, whether you're in recovery or not, you have all the same reactions when you have a loved one struggling.
Yes.
It's very instinctual. And everything kind of goes out of the window because you're scared. You're watching your loved one run towards this cliff and destroy their life, oftentimes destroying yours with them. And there's a panic that sets in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think what was even more upsetting was this kind of lapse of reality, where we've had tons of conversations about alcohol and how we're so glad we're on the other side of it, and the distortions and the delusions. And I would say I was addicted to alcohol, and I'm not addicted to alcohol anymore. It's completely irrelevant in my life. It's being a vegan or something. I just don't want it. And so we've had so many of those conversations, and to hear this denial and this real absence of reality present. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening there in that mindset? Because that wasn't anything that I ever experienced. And typically I don't experience with my clients, because they're already coming here. They've already accepted that they want to change.
Right. Well, I think the further someone is in an addiction, the more delusional they get is the best way I know how to describe it. And that happens for several reasons. A couple are just basic, meaning they're interacting with the world in one of two states. They're either intoxicated, changes how you filter the universe, or they're in withdrawal, which also filters how you're taking in information. So the way you're perceiving things around you is altered all the time. So you've got that layer happening, which is big. But you also have another layer of you're in this, when you're struggling with addiction, you're in this constant state of planning, scheming, using, hiding the paraphernalia, and it eats up all of your mental space pretty much. And simultaneously, you have a lot of shame and guilt. You're making all these promises to yourself. You're breaking all these promises to yourself. And you start to do these other psychological defense mechanisms to protect against the shame and the guilt, which is you get very focused on resentment, self-pity, or everything else everyone else is doing wrong. So it's like a separate kind of self-medicating. It's to medicate one thing, but then I'm mad at myself for doing that. So then I'm psychologically getting deeper and deeper and deeper into these defense mechanisms as a way of not seeing what's really going on in my own life. So when you're dealing with someone in the state, you'll know you are because you have this instinct. You want to grab them by the shoulders and just shake them. When you have that feeling, then you know that's what you're dealing with, because you're like, are we looking at the same picture? It's kind of maddening.
Yeah, it was really, it really felt like he had died in some way, the way that he was communicating with me. And I'm planning on doing another episode more about the current state to what happened, and a little bit about Kratom itself, because I think that even though this is a show about alcohol, it's a weird thing that's out there, and it's a very unassuming, and I think that it's an escalating addiction very quickly that a lot of people don't know about, and seems very innocent. What then? Well, yeah. So I want to come back to this. So there was a lot of deflection on how not necessarily I was the problem, but kind of justifying the use by me stressing him out, or my emotional weight on him, right? Which was even more, hello.
Right.
You
Right.
can handle this. What am I, so then there's this guilt on me too, thinking, you know, wow, I mean, who am I? What am I doing? I am coaching people, trying to help them. And how, am I really impacting this person in this way? Where can I be on my own page? And then not showing up for, and I'm talking a lot about this on the show now, not showing up for my own emotional needs, kind of self-abandoning. And really there was some guilt and blame inside of that as well. So what would you say from that place then is the first step for the loved one to do?
Well, I think a first step is to sort of take a breath and back up and try to step back in. If you don't have any education on it, just get some education, listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video, get a book. And so you can wrap your head around what's going on. That's going to help you interact with whatever's happening more strategically instead of just emotionally being pulled in. Because it's real easy to get in what I call firefighter mode, which is just dealing with the current crisis of today. And while all that's happening, you're just building more and more frustration. You're exhausting yourself. You're putting your own needs on the back burner. Usually, if you're dealing with someone who has an addiction, you're taking on way more than your fair share of responsibilities and other things are happening. And so you get caught up just living moment by moment, and you have to sort of back up, almost like detach from yourself and look at it from up here to get your head around. Let me just back up and look at this whole puzzle instead of just this one little piece today and this little piece tonight and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's really easy to, and I hope it's okay that I'm kind of using this example of my own life to exemplify this because it makes sense to me. You start to play the tape backwards, actually, of all of this. Because and this is the other thing, I'm very intuitive. There was so many times where I blatantly asked the question because this guy was the Hulk. Literally, I'm like, how are you doing that right now? It didn't even make sense. Beast mode and just all the signs, all the questions, all of the year. And you're like, oh my gosh. And so you just that starts to escalate in, your own emotions too. So this was the first thing I did. Really, the state of delusion was what I needed to be validated in. And that was what your videos really helped with, that there is this process that addicts will go through, the denial, the delusion, and all of that. So I was like, okay, this is normal. It's not me. This is the process. And then and this is what I do for anything, even if it's for myself. I'm like, let's get some more information so I can have a new perspective. And then I took the step back so that I could take myself out of the equation and like literally not make me part of it at all. Because I'm not the one taking the stuff. I'm not the one lying. I'm not the one doing any of it. So getting that neutral perspective. And then I phoned a friend. This is like my new thing. Let's phone a friend, because there's a lot of shame too around that, especially people that know me, know him, know our situation, where you're like, so I felt like I was very alone. Like, who can I talk to that's not gonna judge the situation, hold it against me? But I did phone a friend, and it was good to find someone that felt neutral. And obviously that's why your services exist too, because it's a neutral perspective. But that felt really good too, just to be able to share, to get it out, because it was something that I was holding on to by myself for the last 6 years. So after the perspective, then what happens after that?
Well, then I think you have to get a strategy on how you're going to interact in this situation. For most people, the strategy, the first thing is, I want to get my loved one out of denial and get them help. That's usually the first thought. Well, actually, let me back up. The first thought is, I need to get them to get help. and we skip a step, and that step is to figure out, where is my loved one in their stages of change. That's the fancy way of saying it. And because once you can figure that out, then we can go back and match our strategies, our interactions with that person based on their stage of change. For example, a big mistake people make is, you're dealing with someone who's completely in denial. They don't think they have a problem at all. And you're talking to them about going to treatment. They're looking at you like you're crazy lunatic. You're overreacting. And then that destroys your credibility in their eyes. So any opinion you have, anything you have to say, any recommendation is just automatically just sort of brushed off, as in they just stop listening to you because they think you don't know what you're talking about. They don't think you see the picture very accurately. when you're usually what's happening is trying to rush the person to figure it out because you can see it coming for a million miles away and you're like, danger, danger, and you're like, no, this is happening, and your alarms are going off. But if they're in denial, then your immediate strategies all have to be about how do I get them to start seeing this as a problem. Maybe they're seeing it as a problem, but they don't think it's that big of a problem. What do I do? It's sort of looking at where are they at in their stages, not where I want them to be, but where are they really? Your strategy to that. On our channel, we talk a lot about. I say, I want to get people 5 steps ahead. And once we understand where you are, I can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow, and what's going to happen next week, and the next week, and we can be 2 weeks down the road instead of just putting out the fire today. Where are we at? Where are we going to be? What are we going to do when we get there? And that makes you feel a lot more grounded, or just like, okay, I have my hand on this instead of not controlling it, but more like, okay, I got a plan. I know it's out of control.
Yeah. Yeah, that there is, and that's what I tell people too, even for them personally, like there is a process, right? And it's a learning process too. So even though you're doing it from the other side of the table, the other perspective, that it can be one step at a time, and you don't have to, like you said, you don't have to be putting out fires. Talk to me a little bit about self-care for the family, for the loved one, about in boundary setting, because that's something that was really important for me, and I'm still kind of getting clarity about, something I've been talking a lot more to the people on the podcast here too, because it's really important to know what is a non-negotiable for us, so that we can then know how to proceed without letting that experience completely take over our whole life.
I feel like it's really almost like 2 separate things. They're connected, but they're separate. There's self-care and there's boundaries. So I think we'll try to take them one at a time. The self-care, when you have a loved one who's struggling, you get obsessed with fixing that problem the same way that person is obsessed about whatever it is they're addicted to. And then you're in this parallel process. They're chasing their addiction and you're chasing them. And it can get to the point where it's just 24/7 takes over everything. Mentally, you stop going out with friends, you stop doing all of your hobbies and interests and activities. You wake up in the morning, you're checking the bank accounts to see if they spent money. You're every waking second eventually turns into trying to figure out what they're doing today. How do I stop it? Are they lying to me? Proving that, all this stuff. And you have to purposefully decide to take a break from that. You have to turn that off. And it's not saying I'm not going to worry about this, but you have to take a break from it. I call it when you have a front row seat, and especially if the person lives with you, you'll definitely end up in this state. You have to purposefully, even though your instincts don't want to maybe go to yoga class, they may not want to go hang out with friends or want to do the things that keep you centered, you've got to do it. You've got to give yourself a break from thinking about it, because you'll just spin out of control. And you have to get back to, what do I do to take care of myself? Not just, usually when I hear self-care, I think get a pedicure or something, but that's not what I mean. It's more like keeping yourself grounded. Do you exercise? Do you have spiritual activities? Do you have other social friends that fill you up? Do you have passions? It's about reconnecting to those, even though your instincts are trying to shut that down.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything that I teach my clients on how to release alcohol is a lot of emotional processing and emotional management. So from that perspective, it's processing emotions. And for me, it's knowing that I can separate myself from the equation and be in this neutral witness place, but I can also be in the witnessing of my own experience and not denying myself that too. So that was very important for me, and still is, because like you were saying, if you're in that front row seat, then things just get compounded and you're in this constant spiral. So when you do take that step away, it's like, oh, life opens up again, because really in the end, you need to have that perspective that there is more of life too than just this one thing. Although it hurts really bad, like there's other things going on, and you have a child and you have a job and you have all these things that also require your attention and your care and your being healthy. So Yeah, super important. Okay. And then what about boundaries?
The boundaries. I feel like boundaries
are so big.
are so
I know it's its
so
own
huge. It's like
episode.
it's a hard number. The place that I always start from is helping people understand what a boundary is. A boundary is not a rule. This is where we get it wrong. We want to set these rules and we call them boundaries. Like for example, a rule might be you can't have drugs in this house. You can't do X, Y, or Z, whatever. That's a rule you're setting. And the reason it's a rule and not a boundary is because you can't really enforce it. Boundaries are rules you set for yourself, not for someone else.
That you can control, an action or behavior you can control.
That you can control.
Right.
It's what you're going to do and not do, not what another person is going to do or not do. The way I like to remember it is it's okay to build a fence around your backyard, but your neighbors get real mad if you try to build a fence around their backyard.
Right.
Right. And so a boundary is about if someone's treating me badly, I'm going to leave the room. Or if maybe I have a loved one who always calls me intoxicated if I answer after 6 o'clock, they're always intoxicated. A boundary would be, I'm just not going to take their phone call after a certain o'clock. Not, I'm going to answer the phone and tell them why they shouldn't call me after a certain o'clock and give them a big lecture and then tell them not to do it. And then they do it the next day and I pick up the phone and then I tell them again. That's what most people think of when they're thinking of boundary. They're really thinking of, let me tell this person, this is a rule that I want you to follow. But a boundary really is a rule for yourself.
Yeah. 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 And I think it really, when you put it in that terms, it really is so simple because that's what we're talking about on the show all of the time is what is within your control. We have all of these expectations and, ways that we think the world should be. All of these ways that are out of our control, but essentially we think we're setting these boundaries, but we're just creating rules that are going to be broken and there's nothing we can do about it. Right. And that's really what the basis is of so much suffering in our own personal lives in general, regardless of addiction or the reason that people do drink in the first place is it's life broke my rule. I don't know if you're familiar with Michael Singer. He wrote The Untethered Soul. It's amazing. He has a podcast. He does these lectures, but life is always going to bump up against you, but it's you and then everything that's not you, right? So everything's not us. And we really have to get super clear about what is within our control, which is our own thinking, our own emotions, and our own behavior. And so that's really the place that we're taking boundaries from. I love that. And something that I feel like since I've been exploring these a little bit more like deeper for where I am now too, because I think our boundaries change too, growing and evolving and having different roles in our lives is thinking about my personal values is a really good way for me to kind of know my own boundaries and then also not be breaking my own boundaries. That's a really good place to start.
Right. So give us an example, Mary, of a boundary you might set for yourself.
Oh, that's so good. Well, something that I've been working on is my sleep hygiene. So something that happens in this house, I have a 9-year-old and, we love our bedtime routine. It's really important for him. Matthew kind of gets him up and out the door, especially during school time. And I typically do bedtime, but I'm not going to bed at 10 o'clock. So it's not a rule. I mean, it's hard with kids, right? It is kind of a rule, but even with Matthew too, I'm like 9 o'clock, I'm not available after 9 o'clock because that's when I will be in bed. But I'm not saying anything about like there's no consequences or punishment. But Emmett loves for me to tuck him in. So if he doesn't start mobilizing between 7 and 8, which I'm available for him to do the whole thing, then he misses his window of opportunity for me to tuck him in. Like I'm just going to be, I'm going to be in bed.
So good, right? Like I'm available for tuck-ins anytime between this time and this time.
Yep.
And that's different than saying you have to be in bed at this time.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. And I feel like that's where people get the most frustrated because they think they're setting healthy boundaries, but they're really trying to control someone else's behavior. And of course that never works. So you feel like someone's crossing my boundaries all the time. Well, you're really the only one that can cross your own boundaries.
Yeah, it's true.
It's your fence. You open the gate or not open the gate, that kind
Yeah,
of thing.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love thinking about it's like my fence of my queendom. Like this is
Hmm.
how I want to structure it. And what works really well, especially because kids, we do have to guide them a little bit, is I make sure this is a little tangent, but I make sure that I'm actually available and present for him. So like
Hmm.
that there's story time or whatever it is. But he really, really loves it. And it does work when I'm available and present and I'm like, okay, this is the window. This starts now, and let him know because
Hmm.
he's not paying attention to time.
Hmm.
It's been very motivating for him because he wants those snuggles and the back rubs and the things. So
Right. It's more of a positive reinforcement from a parenting perspective, and
yes,
less like a controlling mechanism.
yeah, absolutely. So there's boundaries, and what happens if something I see happen, and this is kind of maybe less, there's like we said, there's a spectrum of use and dependency. So it's
Hmm.
like, what is the impact of this other person drinking? So say this other person is they're drinking out in the like we'll just use alcohol as an example. They're drinking out in the open.
Yeah.
You're not drinking. They're not blowing money. They're not necessarily doing a lot of negative behavior. But it still is to a point that when you interact with that person, it's annoying. Like they're not even necessarily intoxicated. I mean, I know with one drink, people can act different. They change. They aren't the
Hmm.
same present person, right? So what is your take on that? On work, maybe it's not as extreme where there's this kind of intervention moment needed, but
Hmm.
you're growing, you're evolving, and you're still in relationship with this other person that
Hmm.
is still engaging in the way that you maybe both once engaged together.
Right. I think it's really hard to get through to someone who's in that state because you're probably the only one that notices it. Like if you're the partner and they live with you, because no one else is going to see anything about their behaviors being a problem. And so if you approach it like you're drinking
Right.
too much or you shouldn't be drinking every day, again, you're going to lose credibility with the person that's functioning the way you're describing. Because I'm picturing in my head a high functioning person. They go to work, they pay their bills,
Mm-hmm.
they
Yep.
go to soccer practice, they do all the things, but they're still drinking at night, and that maybe changes them. Maybe they just come home and they have drinks and then they just go to sleep. So it feels like you're by yourself all the time. Or maybe they drink and they get kind of obnoxious and they think they're funny and you don't think they're funny. It doesn't even have to be like they turn into a
Right.
monster, right? And it's really hard to get through to that other person if they don't have any other, if the world isn't giving
Consequences, kind of.
feedback anywhere else other than you, that's the fastest way to get in what I call the villain role, the bad guy role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're the only one that has a problem with it. And I pay the bills. I do this, I do that. What are you talking about? That's how they're going to see it. The best way to interact with that, if you're at that level, is to do more of a positive reinforcement thing. What you were saying, if they come home and they're not drinking, say, you don't even have to necessarily speak to the fact that they're drinking or not drinking because that can make someone defensive. But you can say, if they came home and you had a really great dinner, you can even say the next day, man, I really enjoyed being with you. I felt like we had a great conversation. If they love affection and they're sober, be affectionate, be flirty, hold their hand or whatever. So it's
Yes.
more of a positive reinforcement. And if you're trying to get them to see that maybe it is more of a problem, what you can do, I hate to say this, but you can almost, I don't know why I want to say, but I want to say set them up for failure, not in a bad way, but like say, hey, can you help me with X, Y, or Z when you get home today? Right. And now you realize that they may not do that, but once they realize that they're not functioning and holding up their end of responsibilities at home, at the end of the day, their family responsibilities, that'll start to get their attention a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you say, hey, can you do this and that? And then they're not able to do that, or they say they will, but then they don't. If that happens over the course of several times, that's gonna force them to see the issue versus you trying to take up all the slack and then tell them that there's a problem.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that.
Can
So
I
it's
count on you for this? I'm going to go do this. Can I count on you for that? Right. And then that makes them have to see the discrepancy between their functioning level, what they think they should do and what they're actually doing versus you fixing it all for them, doing it all for them, and then being mad at them for it.
right. Yes. Yeah. And then just, and also, yeah, not doing it, right? Not necessarily picking up the slack so that that gap can be there.
So they can see that's more of what I would call like a natural consequence. It's like the
Yes.
information that comes from the world and not from you. You want to be to the, and this isn't 100% possible, but to the best that you can, you want to let the world be the bad guy and you be the good guy. The world,
Yeah.
give them information, and then you can respond with empathy. People figure it out so much faster. That's a formula that really helps people figure things out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a little bit, thank you for that. And I love the idea of the positive reinforcement of not making it about alcohol or drug use, but just pulling out like why it's better when you're both sober, when you're both totally available. And, one of the things that I think is interesting is people talk about alcohol socially, even being a catalyst for connection. And I have my own beliefs, and it's really, though, it's not an authentic moment. There's part of you that is not fully present with that because there's some sort of inhibition. So kind of pulling that out, like this authentic, like, oh, we were able to really connect in this way that I felt like we hadn't before. So yeah, I think that's really awesome.
About the things that are going well or not well, and not even connect it to the substance. Let them
Yes.
connect that dot. They know if they were sober or not.
Yeah.
Don't say it was so great because you didn't drink yesterday. Because as soon as you say that, that feels antagonistic to them, and then
Yeah.
they feel immediately defensive. And if they didn't do so great, they'll connect the dot about whether it was related to their drinking.
Yes,
Don't
absolutely.
connect it for them.
Yeah.
Let them connect that. You put the two dots on the paper and they let them connect it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because I truly believe that even though someone might be in denial in their own experience, I think that every person that is using to an extent that other people are noticing, I believe does have a whisper inside of them that it's not working. I really do.
I totally agree with you. And but when you're giving me these scenarios, I'm assuming that this other person has some level of problem. And the reason I guess I'm assuming that is because in my experience of working with people who have addictions when they're in recovery, they usually don't mind it. Like, let's say somebody's quit drinking. They usually don't mind if their spouse drinks occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't even bother them. And they're happy for their spouse to order a glass of whatever at dinner. Maybe not the first few weeks they get sober, right? But like after they're stable, they don't mind it. What they do mind is if it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
Or if the person's getting sloppy.
Yes.
So when I find one of my clients in recovery is getting really frustrated with their partner, it's not because their partner have one drink or two drinks. They really don't usually have an issue with that. It's because their partner's doing what it is automatically.
Yeah, it's a habitual thing for sure.
I'm assuming in these scenarios that there's a bit of a problem there, not just
Well, yeah. And that's kind of like the empowered sobriety that I work with my clients is typically it's really about them and the experience and the results they want, even if it's their partner, if it's social, if it's whatever. And sometimes things do change naturally. You stop hanging out with certain groups of people naturally just because you're like, oh, there wasn't that depth of connection, or I go different places. Now, when it's your spouse, it's a little different scenario because there's more of a commitment, there's a lot of things entangled in that. And so we really work on, okay, I mean, this just happened where I had a client go out, it was like the first time on a date night, and the husband ordered a glass of wine and she didn't. It was like a big breakthrough moment for her. Now, if they never could have any experiences where he wasn't drinking and she, or where he was always drinking and she wasn't, now that could potentially be problematic. But
oh yeah, that's different, right?
If there's never a special occasion where it's like we can both be sober together, it's like, okay, well, why? But no, it's really about this empowered sobriety that these are the results I want, and they have nothing to do really with any else. But yeah, it can be annoying, frankly. So yes, I think it is more of the scenario that I'm presenting to you is definitely more of a habitual
thing. You
thing.
Can't connect to someone who's intoxicated when you're not intoxicated.
Yeah.
You really are on two different wavelengths. And it won't bother you if it's every now and then, but if it's like my person is always intoxicated and I'm not, it's like now we really are kind of misaligned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what I've found too that's so fascinating is when people do stay in their own lane and in their own experience, that literally probably 99% of the time it does impact the other person, the spouse, and the relationship, because a lot of times people are drinking together. Sometimes that's how they formed their relationship to
Mhm.
begin with, or the other person always stops. Usually there's a little bit of this defense moment where their use can kind of peak on the spouse level. Like they're like, oh, I'll show them I can still handle this. And then they want to kind of join the party because they see all of the benefits of it and where there's a deeper potential for a deeper connection. So I always just say you're changing the rules of the game a little bit of how you guys used to interact. So just give it time. There's a transitionary period and let it, just stay positive and create your boundaries for yourself. So I feel like that natural consequences is, I don't know how much you work with attachment styles in your work at all. Seems a little bit like that too, where if one person, because I've been talking a lot about attachment styles and just thinking about it in my life, if one person disengages from that push pull of anxious attachment and avoidant attachment, which is the dynamic in my household, and steps into that secure attached place, then the other person's just kind of left with their own immature behavior.
Right. It's
So-
like if someone's yelling and then you don't yell back, they kind of notice that they're yelling so much quicker, right?
right.
They're like, oh, I feel kind of silly. Whereas if you engage with it, then it's, it just escalates and escalates.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit? I mean, do you find that there is any one attachment style that is more problematic for addiction than another? Is that,
I don't
does
know
that
that I
correlate
talk
it at all?
I talk about attachment styles a lot in relationships to substances. I mean, relationships to relationships, but I'm trying to think if there's one attachment style that's more prone to substances. I mean, I would say any of the ones that aren't the secure one. If I had to guess, I don't know what the
Yeah.
research says. Right, because either end of that spectrum, but for two opposite kinds of reasons usually.
Right.
But still would be more prone. Secure attachment protect you from developing addictions. I do know that.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's what I,
Neurochemistry that protects you.
yeah. And that's what I've been talking about so much lately. It's like if you are in an unbothered, secure, attached, calm space, and it doesn't mean you don't ever have emotions that are bigger, but if you have that capacity to hold them with these tools, then there's really no need for drinking. I mean, yes, alcohol is an addictive chemical, but it just becomes so much less of appealing and a requirement because you're like, I can handle this.
You feel so much more regulated.
Yeah.
You don't need an external regulation nearly as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just kind of want to come back to this because I feel like a lot of what we talked about from really extreme people in denial, kind of in a delusional state, from the person on the other side, when you aren't the one pushing, when you're not the one pursuing, when you're not the one saying you need to do this, then what happens when you take that step back is the person you're not the problem now, right? From another perspective. And that's where those natural consequences come in. So I think for the whole spectrum, no matter what end of the spectrum the addiction is at, when you don't make it necessarily about you and your relationships and how could you do this to me? And this is what you always do when you're drinking, or you didn't do this, then there's only that now that person can't project onto you. They can only reflect onto themselves more.
Well said. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
They don't get to focus on you as the problem, right? And
Yes.
it's the path. It's the way I envision it is it's like if this person is running to the cliff and there's big spikes at the bottom, you're standing in front, waving your arms and yelling and screaming, don't, danger, don't. They just think, who's this crazy person here?
Right.
Step out of the way, they'll probably notice that there's a cliff and some spikes there.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's so good. And that takes a lot of self-discipline, or not even discipline, but reflection and awareness, and the ability to maybe be wrong, the ability to open your mind to something new. I know I've had to do that for myself. Like, what don't I know? And how can this benefit me in other areas of my life? Right? Because it's always an impact. So I could talk to you forever, but I had this question down about the difference between compassion and enabling. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard the term enabling, but one of the things, and maybe I can make it a little bit more specific too, is a lot of people who do couples that do drink together, which was something that Matthew and I did. It was a big part of our relationship. We had decided to not quit together because it was easy to enable. We were enabling each other for drinking and partying and all the things. So I guess those are two questions. What do you think about the idea of quitting together as a couple, and what are the benefits or problems with that? Because I have my own theories about it. Yeah. And then I guess maybe there's a question about enabling.
I love the idea of it. I'm just not sure how it works out very practically in real life. It sounds good on the surface. If you and your bestie go on a diet or something together,
Right.
it sounds like, oh, we'll be here to support each other. But the problem with it is that you're both very vulnerable at that point, and you're both kind of weak to it. And so it doesn't take, as soon as one person falls, the other person's going down.
Right.
So when you're early in it, you need to attach yourself to someone who's further down the road than
Yes.
you are, so that there's a stability there, because it doesn't, as soon as one, you're each just waiting for the other one to say, hey, you want to get a drink?
Yeah.
And as soon as it's said, it's on.
Yeah.
Both, you don't have enough strength, recovery strength yet to support each other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you
That's what I'm
don't
saying.
take it financial advice from someone that's broke.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and you have your own brain. This is why I say is you have two different brains. You're gonna have different beliefs, different traumas, different triggers, and you got to figure that out yourself. Because you're in your own body. So what do you see? So say someone's not drinking, or I mean, I guess even if they are, but how can someone really support their partner the most through the lens of compassion versus enabling? And how do you see partners enabling in a way that's just not, that's not useful?
Well, I really view enabling pretty different than what most addiction counselors. Usually when people think enabling, they think giving someone money, letting someone live in your house. Basically, it's like I'm supporting them and I'm helping their addiction continue. But I personally feel like the most enabling thing you can do is play the villain. And here's why I think that. If you give someone $20, they may go buy whatever with it, okay? But it's gone. $20 is gone in 5 minutes. If you yell and scream and act like a maniac, they will use that as an emotional reason to keep using for 10 or 15 years against you. I mean, they hold it against you forever. And so it's like, I don't want to give them the emotional currency to keep using. Now, if you're making things super easy for them, meaning cleaning up the messes they're making, if you're bailing them out of jail and paying for their lawyers and calling their teachers and asking for one more chance and taking care of their kids when they're supposed to take care of their kids, you're doing all that stuff, then you're protecting them from the natural consequences. And then you're going to be mad because they're going to be in denial, but it's only the natural consequences that can get them out of denial.
Yeah.
And not only is that problematic, but while that's happening, you're going to be more and more resentful that you're doing that. And then you're going to be interacting with them in a real negative way. And so now we have the opposite formula. You're not letting the world show them what's happening, but you're showing them that you're mad and angry and controlling. And so that's what gives them the skewed view that you're the problem, not the addiction.
Yes.
So you want to reverse that. I'm not as hardcore about don't give them money or don't do this nice thing for them. If you got to hold back one thing, hold back being the villain, because that, I promise you, keeps them stuck longer than the other stuff.
Yes.
So you'll know the difference in enabling. I call it helping versus enabling. Helping, anytime you help anyone with anything, you leave with a really good feeling about it. You feel great for the day.
Yeah.
When you are doing something for someone else and you leave feeling resentful, now you know you're in an enabling category because you're doing something you don't want to be doing.
Yep.
Without having had to do it.
Yes.
So if you're trying to figure out, am I being helpful or am I enabling, just take a minute, check in with yourself and ask, how do I feel about this?
Yeah.
If you feel good about it, then you're fine. If you don't feel good about it, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. And that is something that we talk about all the time here is our own bodies, our intuition, especially as women. I'm obviously geared more towards women here. And this perspective, Amber, is so powerful for everything else that I'm talking about on the show too, which is about our own, and I'm just going to say this here for the audience, is like feminine reclamation, and how I believe that a lot of ways that we've lost some of the pleasure of being a woman has been through, this kind of we've been carrying this giant mental load. And this is why a lot of my clients are drinking, because they're not only they're caring for the household, but they're also out in the workplace. And we want to have equality and we want to be able to have all those things. But some of the innate ways that women function is through pleasure, through receiving, through creativity. And when you start micromanaging, especially like your male counterpart, and you become the villain and you're doing all the things and then resentful for it later, well, that never gives them an opportunity to rise to the occasion and have that natural consequence. And this is just so important in the conversation with my people, because this is a big reason that they're drinking, because they're over functioning, they're overwhelmed, and they're under pleasured. And so if we can get to that place, regardless of if their counterparts are drinking or whether or not alcohol is in the situation, then the need for alcohol to find relief becomes less. So we have to look at the circumstances. Like I said earlier, where are you in control, or where are you trying to control what's not yours?
Right.
To begin with, right? So whether or not they have an addiction, it's such a great point, and where I'm really taking a lot of my content and my people is to this place of being in the receptive mode and in your pleasure can allow someone else to meet you
Right.
where maybe you didn't make space for.
Especially if your partner is a man,
Yeah.
men want to be the hero. And so if you're always the hero,
Yes.
the feminine energy, you're not giving them the chance to be the hero.
Yes.
And then you're feeling resentful, they're feeling resentful. And
Yeah.
I love what you're talking about. I don't talk a lot about it on my channel, but it is an interest area of mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hear what you're saying. I say all the time, like, we ruined it for ourselves. We're trying to do it all. It's our fault. I blame us.
Well, yeah. And I think we're in a beautiful space where we can kind of see it, where we don't have to go backwards. It's like, yes, we have access to so much, but what have I always say, in the fight to prove what we weren't, we lost what we were, right? I get chills thinking about it. And so it's like, it's okay to love being in the caring role and the nurturing role, but you want to be nurtured too. And that's the place where I think we've just kind of had our dukes up in earlier feminist movement, like having to fight our way to the top. And I just don't think, and I think it has ruined a lot of that masculine feminine dynamic, and it's been demasculating for a lot of men who now don't even know how to lead. And I think this is a movement, and then they're turning to then they're turning to substances. So it's all interwoven, right? I could talk to you forever. Your work is amazing. I did want to ask you about the title of your show, if we can kind of end on that note, and where that came from. And yeah.
Well, when I first started my YouTube channel, I was calling it something basic, addiction recovery resources, I think. And I was having trouble building a YouTube audience. This wasn't really the reason, but I was talking to my sister who's super techie, and she said, well, some people might not want to subscribe to it because it's called that, and they may not want that on their profiles or whatever. So she said, call it something that's like people in that space would kind of understand, but other people wouldn't even, like, if they saw that, they wouldn't even know anything. So there was a kid when I first started counseling, and he used to always say, you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down. So put the shovel down as a reference to, you don't have to hit bottom. You don't have to burn all your bridges. You don't have to ruin your whole life and lose everything to walk away from this.
Like, I love that.
Decide when to put the shovel down. And a big part of our goal on the channel is helping people and families do that before they lose everything.
Yep.
And waiting until all that horrible stuff happens.
Yeah, that's such a great note to end on, because I always tell people, I did an episode recently, like, what rock bottom is, and it's like, it could be right now for you. Like, I understand that there is this idea of kind of losing everything and all these other consequences that you have to rebuild, but they're just breaking your own heart. Being disappointed in yourself every day could be your rock bottom. So ladies, it's okay. You can put the shovel down. A friend of mine used to tell me, guilt is like a bag of bricks. All you have to do is set it down. And I think it's a similar concept. So Amber, just tell everyone where they can find you. We'll obviously put it all in the show notes, and any other messages you have to sign everyone off.
The best place to find me is on YouTube. The channel is called Put the Shovel Down. I am on all the other social medias, but my main platform is YouTube. There's more than 1,000 videos on there, whether you're looking for resources for yourself in the journey of overcoming addiction or helping someone else. There's playlists for every angle you want to look at this issue from.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, amazing, amazing resources that really help me. And if you're open-minded enough, you could look at what it is like from another perspective to be in relationship with someone who is drinking to an extent that doesn't feel good anymore. And that I think could give you a lot if you're willing to look in that area. That takes a big leap of bravery for some people. So Amber, thank you so much for all the work you do. I know it's life-changing, and the impact is like you will never know the ripple effect of it. So thank you for being here. It was really nice to share with you today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all the great work you're doing.
Okay, thank you. Bye everyone.